G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Due to popular request, this is our microphone today, the mayonnaise bucket. For those wondering why we have a giant 20 kilo bucket of mayonnaise, this is like 25 or so years old. My dad used to work at a little cafe and they used to buy it for the restaurant. Right? We're not just mayonnaise freaks, we love mayonnaise. But it's okay, it's a good microphone holder because I can actually just rest on it and chill, speak to you whilst I'm leaning on something like a therapist. But no, I was going to go for a ride today and do a video vlogging, but there's a massive rain ban coming in and I don't really feel like, getting drenched. So I thought I'd do a video on something that a lot of the newer riders and maybe some of the older riders that are returning to riding after a long time are going to ask about, and that is the costs of actually owning a motorbike. Dude, there's plenty of videos out there about the costs of motorcycles and what they cost you, and some say it's ridiculous, it's really expensive. That's a lot of crap. It depends on the bike you're buying. So obviously there's different costs associated with different CCs, especially in Victoria. Some of them are more expensive, some are cheaper. So we'll go over a few of them. But before we get into it, g'day ladies and gents. My name is Nathan. I make videos about motorcycles. You know me as Sergeant Wombat. If you like my content, please subscribe. We're on our way to 10,000 right now. We're almost there. I think it's like 700 to go now. It's ridiculous how close we are to that goal. This is very dusty. And man, if you like my content, leave a like and a comment as well. It's always appreciated. But before we go down that rabbit hole, let's get to the video. So, the costs of owning a motorcycle, all right? There's a few of them. We'll get the main ones out of the way first. Obviously, it's buying the damn thing. There's two options you got here. You buy it outright or you finance one. I bought this one outright. It cost me $10,000. You can buy a bike on finance, then your costs will be monthly or weekly, whatever the hell your deal is. That drives your ownership costs up quite significantly. Now, I've never bought a vehicle on finance, so I don't really know what those can be, but I know it obviously depends on how expensive the bike is. If it's $8,000, obviously it's going to be a lot cheaper than if you buy a $34,000 motorcycle, all right? I think that's pretty much basic financial knowledge, all right? Not that I'm a financial advisor, but you get it. I don't have to be to tell you. You buy a cheap bike, it's going to cost you less than if you buy an expensive bike, it's going to cost you more, all right? It ain't rocket science. Now, when it comes to your actual costs, there's a few more. Now, if you're just getting into motorcycling, it is the most expensive hike of just basic requirements because you don't just buy a bike. You're going to have to buy a license. Now, a license in Victoria costs just about up to $1,000 after you've done all stages. I'm talking your learner's test, so your 2-day course, your check ride, and your license test itself. So, obviously in Victoria, I don't know about the rest of the country. I think it's pretty much the same. You do a 2-day learner's test, so you do a practical stuff, and you do your riding test, and you do an on-road test on the second day. Pretty easy, get your license. Then you can do a check ride. You can do a check ride at any point in time, but you have to do your license test a month after your check ride. But you can only do your license test 3 months after holding your learners. So if you're good at riding, and you do your check ride on day 2, you can do it straight after getting your learners, then you still got to wait 3 months to do your license, all right? There's your first $1,000 cost out of the way, roughly. It depends on if you do it on weekends, weekdays, or a hybrid of both. So get that one out of the way. And of course, if you want to have a bike, you have to pay for it. Don't buy yourself a $20,000 Aprilia RS660 for your first bike. Get yourself something that works, all right? Something that runs, maintenance won't cost you too much, and stuff like that. Now, your basic costs will depend, especially on these bikes, your CC-wise. When it comes to your full power bikes, you're basically always in that top echelon of, CC anyway, so the rego stays the same. But in Victoria, there's 3 tiers to registration. I forget exactly what they are and what the cost is. I didn't look it up beforehand. I probably should have, but if you have a certain size, I think it's 250 or 150, you've got the cheapest rego range, then you've got up under 500cc, I believe, and then over 500 is your max one. So if you're going to get yourself a Honda Rebel, you're not paying full rego cost. You're only paying a little bit less. And then obviously if you buy yourself an R7, you're paying full rego price. These are just basic things. They're a bit stupid, I know, but I'll take it because I'm not paying full rego prices. So obviously, your registration is going to be one of those costs we all know about, but just remember, in Victoria or Australia, I don't know if it's the whole country, depending on your engine CC, you're going to pay more or less. So if that's a problem for you, go for a smaller bike. Less yearly payments if you buy your rego yearly, 3 months or 6 months, whatever the hell you decide to do, it will be a different price based on that. Now, the bigger or smaller the engine, the more the petrol tank holds, that's going to drive your fuel costs a different way. If you use 91, 95, or 98, that's your premium versus standard petrol in Americans. I know yours is a different octane. I think it's the same. It's like 80 or something. I know they say over there. But 98's our highest one we get here. Obviously, I only put 98 in the bike. You can put ethanol in this, but no. We're not doing that. Obviously, petrol will either be $1.80, $1.60, depending on what it is now, or premium will either be $2, $2.50, depending on what the hell it's costing. If you're in New Zealand, good luck. You'll have to take a mortgage on your house just to pay for petrol, because I've seen it hit $3 over there. It's ridiculous in New Zealand. So the bigger the engine, obviously, the more drinky the bike does. The more you rev the shit out of the bike, the more it's going to drink. Petrol is not that big of a cost, all right? I've never spent over $20. I've only spent just shy of like $20, and that's the most I've ever spent on petrol filling this up, and that's when petrol's $2.55, and I filled up 3/4 of a tank. So I think the Rebel's like a 14.5 litre tank. You're not really spending a shitload of money on that, so the cost of riding is cheaper than a car will always be. The biggest cost of riding, I'd say, is the risk you take, but we'll get to that. Tyres are the biggest expense of motorcycles. Now, a tyre for a bike can cost anywhere from $250 to $700. Tyres for bikes are more expensive than tyres for cars for what they are and how long they last. You get like 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers out of some tyres, some more, some less, but you're still spending a shitload of money. So those high grippy sports tyres, you probably get 3,000 to 5,000 kilometers out of them before you get a flat spot and you really want to get rid of it. And that'll cost you $500-600 per tyre. So just keep that in mind. If you don't have a lot of money, you don't want to spend a lot of money on tyres, you can always put a sport touring tyre on. That does increase your tyre's lifespan. So you have a grippier sidewall part of the tyre, or side part of the tyre, and the mid's a bit harder rubber so it lasts longer. That's an option, but if you just want the pure Diablo Rosso 4, 5, 6, whatever the hell they're up to now, you're going to spend a bloody pretty penny just doing tyres, okay? So keep that in mind. That's one of the costs that sort of gets you by surprise. Tyres cost a lot of money. When it comes to the rest of the stuff, servicing bikes doesn't tend to cost too much, although the major service for my bike cost $1,000. If you own a Ducati, prepare to pay money, bro. Ducatis, especially Desmo valve ones, not the new ones, they cost a fucking lot of money. Desmo services cost like $2,000-3,000 from what I've heard, so if you're buying an old Ducati and you have to do a Desmo service, prepare to fork out the Ducati cost. Now, Aprilias don't have Desmo valves, so obviously it doesn't do it, but it's still Italian, so costs are still expensive. Be warned, Ducati's Desmo services, they cost money. Parts are expensive depending on the bike. CF Motos, cheap bikes to buy. Apparently the parts are expensive. Ducatis, good luck. Triumphs, they're expensive too. Compared to cars, bike parts cost a lot more, and installing them is obviously more annoying for some people, and then getting them installed by a mechanic, there you're going to spend more money. Maintenance costs, I'd say, is just more than a car in comparison to what you're actually doing. It's not enough to scare you off and break the bank, don't worry about it. Modding bikes, that can also cost a bit of money, like belly pans cost you $200 to $600, exhaust, this one here was $600-700. You're paying a lot of money for a pipe. Now this exhaust here is only where to like there, it's just a slip-on, and that was $675 for just that little bit there. That's where your big costs are. Modding bikes costs a lot. Now I completely glossed over this before. I was going to go for it, and I completely sidetracked myself. If you're a new rider, the license isn't the expensive part, the gear is. Now, you're going to be spending $200 to $300 on your first helmet probably. If you don't, you can probably spend $600, $700, $2,000 you can spend on a helmet. Don't cheap out on a helmet, but remember, if you can't afford a great helmet, the lowest price helmet you can buy at a store will probably still have the safety rating, and it will still save you in an event of a crash. But I say don't cheap out on a helmet, but if you absolutely have to, the cheap helmets will still protect your noggin, okay? They'll just be a lot noisier, there's a lot more wind noise and stuff like that. My first helmet was a $150 Scorpion helmet, had a little flip-down visor, it was a modular helmet. It did the job, but goddamn, putting it on now, it is so loud compared to even the Ruroc. And the Rurocs are known for not being quiet helmets. So just keep that in mind. Then you got to buy a jacket. My jacket was $600. Gloves, $100, $200 each, depending on what you want to buy. Some are $400. Pants, if you want to buy Kevlar, they're $200 to $500. Leather, they're more expensive. Good pair of boots, $200 to $500. Man, you want to buy a neck protector. Balaclavas, they're like $50 to $10. Depends on how expensive they are. That's just for wind protection. But if you want to wear armor, that's expensive. You want to replace the crappy armor that Australia's default armor is, which is just hardened foam, and you want to put the proper, like, I forget, it's like silicon. They're like those proper armor plates. They're expensive too. They're like $50 each. They're not that expensive, but when you add them up and you buy a whole bunch of them, they do add up. So your gear will add up in terms of your overall costs for owning a bike. But in terms of that, that's basically all the ownership costs. You got your gear, your license, tires, servicing, maintenance, stuff like that, and mods are optional. So people say bikes are expensive. They're not expensive. They are cheaper than a car, but bits of them tend to be, in comparison to the price of car bits, they are outrageous. Tires are expensive for bikes, but they're not going to kill you, all right? So don't be scared when people say owning a bike is expensive and stuff like that. It's not. It really isn't. I would ride this over the car every day. I drive an XR6, 4-litre Barra engine. I get barely 400 kilometers out of the tank before I have to fill it up. The bike, I'll get 180. I know I can fill it up at like 220. Some people, if you do country roads, like 280, 300 kilometers an hour. I'm never going to get that because I ride hard. So I get about 180, 200 Ks before I have to fill it up. But I usually fill it up at 150. But $10 at 150 Ks, 1, 2, 3, $30, and I've done more than the Falcon will ever do. So, and the Falcon's like $100 to fill up or $120 depending on what the petrol cost is. So I'm telling you, this will always be cheaper than a car. Now, if you're driving an old diesel or a Mondeo where they can get like 1,000 kilometers out of the tank, or a hybrid, goddamn, maybe then it might be on par with the fuel cost. But I'm telling you, dude, bikes, don't be scared when people say they're expensive to own. They're really not. And that's all this video is basically coming to tell you. So this has been me, Mayonnaise Man. If you have any other questions or anything you want to add, because you know I like to miss things without trying, if you have anything else you want to add, please comment it down below. If you want to yell at me, be my guest. I'm not going to be mad at you. You know I love your spicy comments. Add my interaction up, please. So, ladies and gents, that's all I have for today. Take it easy, keep it cheesy. It's been me, Mayonnaise Man, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. So, peace. Bye.